Everybody has a breaking point. But what happens when an ordinary person gets pushed way past it? We're talking about grief, injustice, cruelty, the kind of pressure that makes something snap. Today, we're going to dive into 3 true stories of people who did just that, and how their hunger for revenge completely changed everything. So that's the big question, right? I mean, what does it really take? It's one thing to get angry, but it's a whole other level to sell everything you own to buy a tank, or to become the most terrifying pirate in the Caribbean. We're going to dig into those exact moments, the ones where a person is changed forever. Okay, so here's the plan. We'll start with the incredible story of the fighting girlfriend from World War II. Then we'll meet a pirate who was, well, let's just say notoriously cruel. And finally, a Robin Hood-style outlaw. And after all that, we're going to try to figure out where exactly is the line between justice and pure vengeance. So our first story doesn't start on a battlefield. It actually starts with a love story. Maria Oktyabrskaya was a proud military wife in the Soviet Union, and she was just completely head over heels in love with her husband, Ilya. I mean, her whole world was him and his career. When the war started, Ilya was shipped off to the front lines. Maria was evacuated and sent to Siberia, and she just waited and waited. Just try to imagine that for a second. 2 full years of silence, 2 years of hoping and praying for a letter, only to finally get the news that he'd been killed almost right at the beginning. The devastation, it's just unimaginable. But that news didn't just break her. It forged something new inside her. That grief curdled into this white-hot rage, and instead of falling into despair, she found a new purpose: revenge. She sold literally everything she had, donated the money for a tank, and sent it with a letter that had one very specific demand. She had to be the one to drive it. And in memory of her husband Ilya, she had those exact words painted right there on the turret. Can you just picture the looks on the faces of her new crew? They thought it was a joke, some kind of PR stunt. They couldn't believe they were being sent into a war zone with a middle-aged woman driving a tank called the Fighting Girlfriend. Yeah, they stopped laughing pretty quick. And this is where her courage just becomes wow. In her very first battle, an enemy shell takes out her tank's tread. So against direct orders, she jumps out in the middle of a firefight and fixes it herself. She did it again a month later, and then a third time in January of '44. Each time, she stared death in the face to save her crew and her tank. But on that third repair, her luck finally ran out. She was hit by shrapnel, and she fell into a coma that she never woke up from. Her personal war for revenge lasted just over a year, but her incredible bravery earned her the highest honor in the entire nation. Her story, it was born from love and grief. But our next one, well, it comes from a much, much darker place. So this next guy, he doesn't exactly fit the good person label. But here's the thing. He wasn't born a monster. He was hammered into one by a world that showed him zero mercy. And when he finally snapped, he became the stuff of nightmares. He was born Jean-David Naul in France and was sold as an indentured servant in the Caribbean. When he finally got his freedom, he fell in with a crew of buccaneers. And for the first time in his life, he had a family, a real sense of belonging. But then, that was just brutally ripped away from him when Spanish soldiers ambushed his crew and slaughtered every single one of them. And this is the moment everything changes. He only survived because he smeared his friend's blood all over himself and hid among their dead bodies. Can you imagine crawling out from underneath the corpses of the only people who ever treated you like a human being? The man who stood up was not Jean-David Naul. He was Francois Lalonnais Naul. And his new life's mission? To inflict as much pain on the Spanish as he possibly could. His revenge wasn't about gold or treasure. It was about pure sadism. He became notorious for his theatrical, horrifying cruelty. See, he didn't just want his enemies dead. He wanted them to suffer in the most awful ways you can think of. And he would often leave just one man alive, for one reason, to spread the story and the terror of his name. This, right here, this was his personal message to the governor of Cuba. After he captured a ship with 90 soldiers sent specifically to hunt him down, he personally beheaded 89 of them, one after another. He sent the last man standing back to the governor with this chilling promise. This was just raw, uncut vengeance. So far, both of these stories have been intensely personal, right? A dead husband, a murdered crew. But our last story is different. Our last person took all his rage and aimed it at an entire system. And this is where things get really complicated. And that line between a villain and a hero starts to get really blurry. We're heading to Civil War-era North Carolina now. Henry Berry Lowry was a young man from the Lumbee tribe, a local indigenous group. He and his family were basically caught in the middle, between the Confederacy on one side and a local power structure that treated them as less than human on the other. Just look at how fast this all spiraled. It starts with Henry defending his father from a bogus accusation. That leads to a revenge killing by the local militia called the Home Guard. So Henry avenges his cousins. And then, in retaliation for that, the Home Guard drags his father and brother out and executes them, right in front of him. This wasn't a feud anymore. This was war. Watching his family die like that was Henry's snapping point. He put together a gang, and they targeted the wealthy plantation owners who were running the whole unjust system. They stole from the rich and gave to the poor, Lumbee, Black, and white families who were all starving because of the war. And as you can imagine, he very quickly became two different people in the eyes of the public. The authorities, they were completely powerless against him, mainly because the common people were fiercely loyal to him. So eventually they put this massive bounty on his head, which for that time was just an absolutely insane amount of money. Just to give you some perspective, that's almost $1/3 in today's money. That is life-changing cash. And yet, even with all the poverty in the region, not a single person ever tried to betray him to claim it. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of loyalty he inspired. And then, poof, he was just gone. After one last giant score, he completely disappeared. The money from that heist wasn't shared with the community this time. His wife never remarried. That giant bounty was never ever claimed. He just faded away, becoming a legend, a ghost story that the wealthy landowners told their kids. So, after all that, where are we? We've looked at 3 totally different people from 3 different times. A grieving widow who turned her love into a weapon of war, a tortured servant who became a monster, and a young man who fought a corrupt system and became a legend. The one thing that connects them all is that breaking point, that exact moment when the world just broke something inside of them. And their response, every single time, was to meet violence with more violence. Their actions made them famous, infamous, and in Maria's case, even a national hero. So, was Maria a hero, or was she just a widow blinded by revenge? Was Lalone just a product of his brutal world, or was he pure evil? Was Henry Lowry a freedom fighter, or just a killer? The truth is, the lines are incredibly blurry. They were probably all of those things at once. And that's what makes these stories so fascinating. They make us ask ourselves, when you're pushed to the absolute limit, where does justice end and vengeance begin? That line might be a lot closer than any of us think.